As a British boy who grew up in the early 2000s, Harry Potter was well on my radar, so like most kids, I bought straight into the franchise and this game. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for the GameCube. It really was the franchise for me. I really cared about no other film property besides Harry Potter. I was only 2 years old when this game came out, so I want to see how much this game holds up today. I will be analysing and critiquing this game and its systems, what was done well and done not so well. Everything from the story, gameplay, music and so on. Seeing how these mechanics hold up and how they can be improved. I'll be comparing it to the movie when necessary, how the story and environments match or don't match, and how that affects the game. So let's just get into it. The opening cinematic is really interesting. It's a lot tenser and the scenes here are a lot more interesting than the actual game. Maybe not the best thing to show at the start. We start with us crashing straight into the burrow. This game is not strong with its in-game cutscenes as we'll come to see, although this gets us into the actual game a lot quicker, so I would say that's a good thing. Speaking of those bad cutscenes, here they are. It's not the most egregious here, and it gets worse, but it's clear that we have outside shots of the house so they can avoid having to animate the models to have a proper conversation. At least the Miss Weasley voice actress sounds so similar to the actor.
Any of you ever give a thought of how worried I'd be?
We go from that argument to having to de-gnome the place. She might as well have said, "Time for tutorial, Harry." Also, I find it really weird that Harry is in school robes and everyone else isn't. But they change into their robes later on and Harry never changes outfit. You get control of Harry quite quickly, and the first thing I notice is the sound design. It's already amazing for its time. The ambient sounds along with the footsteps really help immerse into this game's setting. We're told to hit the glass jar and the power slider with this game's stunning spell, Flipendo, which is only a spell within this game and a couple of the other Harry Potter games. When you cast Flipendo, the spell locks on if you're firing within the general vicinity of a target, which is not unnatural for games like this, and it is a smart decision so that pinpoint accuracy isn't needed. There's more on that later though. We're then sent inside to de-gnome the barn. Even though it isn't our fault they came and rescued me, I'm now doing their work. We have to hit the gnomes off the rafters, but we're forced to back up to be able to hit them. That's either bad or good game design. It might be teaching you about hitting from a distance or the right angle, which is needed a few times in the game. We then meet the Weasley family's washing machine, and now we have to duel it, which is weird, considering there are like 3 other people with magic who could duel. I get it's a part of the tutorial, but it's still just kind of odd. Charming though. The camera goes from not bothering to do anything interesting to doing a cool shot from inside the washing machine. It's the first boss, and unfortunately, this is the formula most bosses will follow. Shoot when exposed, then wait while they do their invincible attack. Bosses never really improve gameplay-wise. What you experience here is about the length of how far they go. We take down the washing machine and get a chocolate frog, which is a nearly full health restore. Then we head into the garden to continue our de-gnoming adventure. What we're taught here is to stun the gnomes, pick them up, then spin and release at the right time to throw them into the garden as far as you can. There are a couple of targets to hit. Hitting them gives you a trading card, the collectibles in this game. You can find these collectibles scattered randomly around the world, mainly in chests, buying them, or trading with other students. There are 101 to collect. You can get a trading card from this activity. From what I read online, it's just beating your record within a few tries, which I feel implies that you can miss this card without trying. The mechanic of throwing gnomes actually isn't the easiest to grasp, so the fact you might be able to miss it is so ridiculous. I'm not sure if you can even get this specific card later on in the game. I didn't go for 100% regardless. When you collect 10 cards, your life increases. I upgraded my life twice throughout this playthrough, never feeling like it helped me. If you want to 100% the game, then go for it, but otherwise I never feel it's worth your time to collect these cards. Anyway, the gnome throwing was fun, but lost its novelty quite quickly, so I moved on. With the denoming done, we're told we can end the day. We're given another chocolate frog, which is interesting because you never really see them again. The game really thinks you're going to be low on health. It really treats you like you're a toddler, and this doesn't get any better. We get told we did a good job, and that we can end the day, which is a cool mechanic. You can end the day on your own terms. We can never come back to this place, so having extra time to explore it is neat, even though there's not much incentive to do so. It's better to have the freedom to do that than not, and I'm happy they shoved us into the game as quickly as possible. Although rushed storytelling is a massive flaw of this game and it gets a lot worse. When you end the day, you're given a narration of Harry using the Flu Network by Stephen Fry. While Stephen Fry is a great narrator, they have this instead of any actual cutscene. I'm not sure if they couldn't make any more cutscenes, or if they got Stephen Fry and wanted to use him in the 3 scenes they use him in, but it just pulls you out of the experience. I can see what they were trying to go with, a book-style way of telling this part of the story, but are they expecting me to close my eyes every time Stephen Fry speaks and imagine what he's saying? Because Harry said Diagon Alley wrong, we're taken into Borgenbergs. And the first objective is to hide in this torture device without any incentive. There's no reason why anyone would think to hide in here. I only had an idea because I had seen the deleted scenes from the movie, but there's really nothing. No quest update or any objective. As you're hiding, Draco and Lucius enter and give a book too big for any one person to feasibly hold to the shopkeeper. So that's an obvious prompt for us to go and read the book. When the cutscene ends, Harry leaves the torture device and we're introduced to the stealth system. Kind of. You can accidentally break that system as I did. You're supposed to walk slowly past the hand, but since the idea of slowly walking up to something never really appears again, this isn't really the stealth system. We'll get to that a little later. I feel it would have made more sense for the stealth section to be something else. Maybe avoiding the shopkeeper whilst trying to get into the torture chamber to hide. Then you could go from there, without trying to sneak past the hand. We learn Lumos here, a spell that is needed about 4 times in this game, and half of those are here. Lumos is used to illuminate hidden doors. You have to read the book to actually understand that. When I was a child, I spent probably about half an hour messing around, not understanding that you have to go in the back room of this torture chamber and hold Lumos against the wall. The wall moves and I actually enjoy the environment and the feel of this area, even if it doesn't make any practical sense. It has real horror vibes that are really appropriate and well done for this game. The green and grey and black, the tense music. This all comes together really well. I shouldn't be surprised as the man who did this music was Jeremy Soule, who did Skyrim. We come downstairs to see this imp taunting us. Then vases come out of the wardrobe and roll at us. It's really weird, but it's okay for a beginning fight. We destroy all of the vases and then use Flipendo to knock the imp down. Man, if I didn't know about climbing mechanics already, this would have been a fun experience of rubbing yourself against all the surfaces until something happens. We climb up the wardrobes and then need to throw an imp into a cage to be able to climb it. This is at least pointed to in the fact you can see another imp in the cage, which is nice. Although the next puzzle consists of either going to one end of a hallway, getting an owl treat, and having to go to the other side where there is an owl perch. If you have an owl treat, Hedwig will fly down and do a task for you. Somehow, she can fly down here and unlock a ladder for you. Another way this puzzle can go is, you go to the owl perch, I told you need an owl treat, then you go back to the other end of the hallway, get the owl treat, and then go back to the owl perch. How riveting. We'll see more egregious examples of this later, but most puzzles are boringly easy effort puzzles. You climb up the ladder and come to a puzzle that most people will try and run across and fall through the floor. I already knew to use Lumos here. It definitely is a better puzzle. You try one thing, get punished, and then know the floor is lava. You don't have any tools besides Lumos to figure it out. I feel like the game is being unfair, but it's cool if you can figure out to use Lumos. It's just unfortunate that a puzzle involving Lumos never comes up again. When you reach the end of the hallway, you crawl through a 1-inch long hole. Not sure what the point of that is, or this other door. Coming outside, a door is locked, so we have to unlock it. There's nowhere else to go. Lumos doesn't work anywhere, so where to go? By sliding behind this debris, of course. This mechanic could have been better if used earlier, having to cross a wall over the falling wood, since that's how you'll be using this mechanic later on. It's just a weird place for this mechanic to be. Anyway, once again, the difficult puzzle of going to one area, pressing something, then you go back to the locked door and press another button, then go back again. Incredible. The other good thing about leaving this area is getting to hear the Diagon Alley music. We come out into Diagon Alley, and the area is really well done. The wizards and witches are properly modelled, even if some of them are reprints. They feel like they are real, which is nice considering a lot of the game will come to feel like it revolves around you. It's quite spacious for what it's worth. The lighting is done amazingly. It's really bright in the open sun, and slightly darker as you go underneath the tight roofs of the shops. It's one of the more enchanting areas of the game, and getting here really took me back. Environments really are this game's strong suit. It just sucks that the map is unclear, so navigating them can be hard. We run into Ginny and she tells us she lost her things, so of course it's up to us to get them back. But first we have to get a book that makes our spells stronger. It's a more powerful attack that is only ever useful for this specific activity, destroying barrels and getting a strength test higher, which neither of them appear again. When you think about the spell, you think about how it might affect combat. It can't. Enemies only ever get stunned in one normal flipendo, so why they bothered to have this mechanic is beyond me. Anyway, with that book forgotten, we have to start hugging every wall to see which store is which. There are so many features in this game that boggle me, but having you slow down as you approach a shop door is one of the weirdest. This game is becoming a test of patience over everything. When you actually get into a store, it's quite entertaining. The first one I got into was Gamble and Japes. The colours are relatively bright. The pumpkins grouped with the area don't fit, but I feel it creates a juxtaposition that works with the music. It makes the pumpkins a joke rather than a creepy decoration, and the grumpy sounding shopkeeper in a jovial shop adds to that whimsicalness. I'm gushing over this moment because it really is the special environments that made this game so exciting to explore. You're offered the choice to buy stink pellets for the first time here, which is interesting because you can enter the 3 shops in any order you like. One of the 3 contains the game's first proper stealth section. Stink pellets can only be used in these stealth sections. You can buy them with sickles, which is a currency only in this area for some reason. In the back room of this man's shop, we find the last time we'll need the enhanced Flipendo spell. We get the quill and just head over to the leaky cauldron. And the atmosphere here is so cozy. It really does feel like some lively pub. Besides the massive safety hazard here. Falling through it, the first area is more of the same. Press the button, something happens. But it's here we meet these fire-spitting enemies that spit fire. Cute concept, I suppose, but these enemies are just the worst. The poor camera angle paired with the unclear range, especially in this tight camera area, makes them a headache rather than an obstacle. The only thing going for this area is the tightness of it, and how the fire ass monsters and barrels make it slightly tense because there really isn't a safe zone. On the flip side, creatures that are hard to read make it stressful to navigate without getting unfairly hit. Pick your poison. Anyway, we get Spell O-Tape, and then go on to our last store.
We're closed. I'm feeding the stock. Keep out.
Yeah, I have no idea where that came from. This environment is decent. The sounds of monsters and rattling cages is really unsettling. The shopkeeper tells us to leave, then just walks away, and we're introduced to the first proper stealth section. I get caught here, but as you see, there's no real punishment. It boils down to whether or not you get seen, which is so much easier done than said. Although the camera is limited, it does add a bit of tension to the stealth section, even though that same camera is exploitable in other areas and creates more issues than solves. At least this back room is cozy. Not sure how Ginny survived falling out of a lit fireplace though. We're then pressed to get a Wiggenweld potion that revives you when you lose all your health. It's a neat concept, but will mainly be used to revive you from the utter bullshit this game throws at you. It has to be refilled each time, which forces you to be prepared and remember to fill it when you can. We enter the store to get our final book, where the most awkward cutscene in this game plays out.
Bet you loved that, didn't you, Potter? Famous Harry Potter. Can't even go into a bookshop without making the front page.
Leave him alone. He didn't want all that.
Potter's got a girlfriend.
I suppose your parents will go hungry for a month to pay for all the books you're going to need at Hogwarts. Here, girl, take this one. It's the least I can do.
Lucius comes over to directly berate Ginny. How weird. In the movies, it was never Lucius that insulted the children, at least directly. It was only ever when Arthur was around, because Lucius's issue is with him.
Vacant expressions. Tatty. Second-hand book. You must be the Weasleys.
This is the first of many ways how the game missing out on characters either ruins the story or makes it difficult to watch. Ginny leaves, and as everyone else clears out, Ron then runs in, literally a second after Ginny leaves, to tell us that we missed the train to Hogwarts. Does this mean canonically Ginny missed the train as well or what? It's such an obvious pacing issue it hurts. At least Gilderoy interjecting the conversation with his stories is entertaining. We leave the store, and for someone who just came rushing in here a moment ago, Rod is now the calmest and most patient person in the world.
I'll meet you in the courtyard outside the leaky cauldron.
Let's just get to the next area. Ron flies straight into the Whomping Willow just like in the movie. It has a wooden eyeball and hands, removing a bit of the fantasy and making it more like a horror creature. To this game's credit, it looks pretty terrifying, and for this area, I feel like it's fitting. This environment is really ominous and well done. The music really lends to it also. Although I get hit by this vine out of nowhere, this unclear obstacle coupled with the camera makes for a really frustrating start. At least you can hit these other ones down even if they do return quickly. You can hit these glowing mushroom things, and they make a decent incentive to get beans from as they're quite fun to hit. Although some people might not have that desire since by this point, you don't know what you can get with your beans. But at least the counter keeps that incentive high. Any tension this level gives is quickly ruined by the frustrating vine enemies that hit you from a mile away or make you take a hit. This vine here is always in an active state and I can't move past it without taking damage. And this continues, as the hard to control camera coupled with these hard to read obstacles turns them into a chore as opposed to an actual challenge. We're given a tutorial on needing to shoot things, which is weird considering we did that already. Anyway, we have to beat a certain amount of these tree imps to progress. It doesn't feel that way considering nothing happens after you win. They give the imps a health bar to make you fight them, which is odd. I'll give it some credit because it is tense, having to rotate between all these holes quickly. Getting swarmed is entertaining, but then I'm not sure if that's because of the poor camera. When you reach a certain area, a tree will fall down, allowing you to progress. The obvious issue with this is that you are being rewarded for doing nothing. This is just so awkward that I don't feel like I am working through the area. The progression happens without me. You find a Hedwig perch right before the next area. It tells you about a new enemy and how to defeat them. This is very odd considering they clearly have no issue just shoving a tutorial in your face, and the perch wasn't originally for this. That tutorial is for these skeletal wolves. You have to hold Lumos on them to destroy them. I admit I really enjoy this area. The wolves are genuinely terrifying. Their house and ghost-like design paired with a challenging way to defeat them makes for a good area. It's just a real big shame these creatures never appear again, along with the creative use for spells. We were enjoying this area too much, so we have to destroy a bunch of forest imps again, then finally get to the Whomping Willow. The scale of this fight is really good. Its arms and height really put this imposing feeling on you, but that's all the good I really have to say about it. This boss fight is a simple test of avoid left, avoid right. For the most part. You can hang back to avoid most of its attacks, but later in the phases, it'll start throwing rocks at you, forcing you to move. After it attacks for a bit, you'll have to hit its hands, then its eye to be able to damage it. Do this 3 times and you're done. It's okay for an early boss. It's enjoyable because you can control the pattern, and you're actively having to be engaged without being mistreated. After you win, a cutscene contrivance happens. You leave, are scolded by Snape, who is apparently waiting for you, and then you get to move on to Hogwarts, where it's really captivating. The ghosts flying around, the music, the students, it feels pretty grand. The floors and walls have these intricate patterns that are really well done. The environment coupled with the music makes this area really charming. This is one of my favourite areas in video games, just because of the sounds and lighting, but that's all ruined by Ron. So we have to follow Ron, but he walks slower than a Skyrim NPC, which is really annoying if you don't know where you're going. Thankfully, when you climb the staircase, at each level it tells you what classrooms and such are on that floor, besides Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff common room, as they seemingly don't have a dormitory and neither does Slytherin. This is one of those things that really breaks the illusion of Hogwarts, as well as the audio that keeps cutting and recutting in a way that makes me think my disc is scratched. Nearly Headless Nick greets us just so he can die later on. He serves literally no purpose besides that. The hallway to the Gryffindor common room is really cozy and warm. Hermione was apparently stalking us or something because she appears out of thin air to tell us the password. The door to the Gryffindor common room is apparently a hole in the wall. I get magic exists, but does architecture not? The Gryffindor common room is amazingly realised, and I feel it competes with the movies. The light shining through the windows, the fireplace. I know nothing about colour theory, but there's something about the red, brown and blue that makes this place really cosy to be in. Although they kept from the movies that there is seemingly no girls' dormitory. They could have just added a locked door at the very least. It's a living room with a bedroom for boys. It's a pretty weird design. When inside, Ron teaches us about the shop mechanic, which Harry sounds very enthusiastic about.
Wow, I must go and see them. Where are they?
Especially because he has to go through the most bland stealth section ever. You have to go through the study room where Percy is. This is the start of how stealth will really go in this game, avoiding prefects. You can throw a stink pellet seemingly anywhere because it has the radius of a nuke, and that'll stop them for a few seconds. Or you can use balloons to lure them to certain areas. It can be mildly tense thanks to the music. It does a good job of conveying some sort of danger, and the poor camera also adds to it. But for the most part, it's just a movement puzzle. There's no real thought in it. We'll talk about it much more in depth later. And again, for some reason, the hole is a door that you have to climb through, which again, makes no sense. So we're introduced to the shop. You can use your beans to buy upgrades. The only worthwhile thing to buy is the beanbag upgrade, potion vial, and if you're 100%ing the game, the Lumos spell. But with nothing to buy, we end the day. We start our first day at Hogwarts really anticlimactically. Like, why is Ron the only one here? I understand they don't need to have more students, but the first day should be special. Because it makes no sense that this many other house students are hanging outside the Gryffindor common room when there are none inside it. If you talk to students, they might ask if you have a certain trading card to trade. It's a neat idea to trade cards as actual kids would. There's nothing much else to say. What I will say is Hufflepuff's signature colour in this game is purple. I'm not sure why, but it does look cool. Hogwarts is very exciting. It's one of the best captures of the Hogwarts feel, although it does go against the movies by showing students from other houses talking to each other.
It's ironic because this game is showing the different houses being friends more than bloody the movies do. Like, it's quite nice to be fair. It's refreshing from the typical all houses are different and like separate.
We're able to explore the classrooms, and it's really cool, although they lack their own identity. Maybe they could add things like how most schools have posters and grass and such on their walls. It's only a minor nitpick. In the classrooms, you'll also see chests with slime, a gold tint, a cobweb, or something blocking them from being opened. They only ever have cards in them, so it's cool if you want to 100% this game, otherwise they're just there to open later with the new spells we get. There's not much else in this classroom. You either get a single bean or a stink pellet or a balloon. Not really worth your time.
Okay, this is not as thrilling as it used to be. This is just tedious.
It's cool that you can explore this early, but it's just empty. I never even end up using the balloons. Stealth in this game is so laughable, I never found myself needing them. The immersion of the school is broken when the kids just stare at you. They drop whatever they're doing just to full body turn at you. Yeah, it makes no sense that we can't just go to the store during the day. It is just punishing the player for exploring. Imagine walking all around Hogwarts, searching for 100 beans, and then not being able to spend them. Coming to lose your beans as you have to go to class and then lose them during the trials. Couldn't they at least set up shop somewhere else? Another nearly headless Nick cutscene happens and is still jarring. It exists to set up Nick for later, so it feels forced and awkward. You can now explore the outside of Hogwarts, although it is just paths that teleport you, taking me out of the experience. In the PS2 game, you can fully free roam, so if I have to recommend a version, it would be that one. We get to Quidditch class where all 10 students are there. The teacher publicly bullies Neville when we do the flying tutorial.
I was holding down as well, wouldn't let me go down. Now it's letting me go down.
Excellent. You seem to have lost.
Flying is actually not bad for a game of this age, besides the turning. You have to stop moving completely to do sharper turns, which stagnates the flying. If you switch the flying settings, it controls a lot better. We go into the greater task, which has some rings that will move and some will shrink. We got a C, which is higher than any of my GCSEs. Ron comes to us and despite having done nothing, in the middle of the morning tells us he is tired and is going to take a nap until the evening. I stay up like a big boy to do the course until I get an A+, but get nothing. Let's just end this day. We wake up to see the house point ceremony, which is pretty neat to have your progress rewarded in some way. Although as you go on, we'll see that it's actually impossible for Ravenclaw or Hufflepuff to beat you. Their points literally do not climb at some points. You can however lose to Slytherin, so there's some incentive. Heading downstairs, Hermione has been looking for us by waiting alone in the common room. She tells us we need to help Neville because he has gotten stuck behind a curtain. Besides the obvious flaw there, the game seems to be self-referential.
And I suppose you want me to get him out?
I'm not going to list all the plot holes here because that would take up so much time. You can pause as I passively aggressively put them on screen. We tried to leave but we get interrupted twice. First hear the basilisk voice, which Harry seems to be completely okay with afterwards. Then Nick immediately stops us to remind you that he's a character, so when he dies you can at least say you knew him when. The tense music here again is brilliant, really creating a dreading atmosphere. The ghosts that come out at night also are a neat touch. Heading downstairs, we're met with what I'd call the first actual stealth section. You have to navigate past about a dozen prefects to get to the library. Like I said before, the camera is really awkward, so if you want to see what's on your right, you have to stop and check the corner. But here I peek the corner to see a prefect an inch away from it. I feel like for this to work better, you should be able to see a bit more down way, so you don't get caught peeking because they were slightly off camera. This would allow you to see when you can peek around corners. Then peek down the long way to see if a prefect is facing your way. Then you can make a decision. I think the fix would be to maybe implement a top-down camera, coupled with a more punishing system. Their move patterns could be more randomized or reactive. I'm not sure. I try not to point out an issue without a solution, but it's a bad system and I don't know any possible fixes for a game of this time. It never becomes satisfying. You only ever get caught because the camera is bad or they will throw spells that will clip through walls. I feel stealth borders that line of being so bad it becomes good. Any lack of information you get adds to the stress, but I don't think that's a good thing. If you want a better experience, head to the bottom of the area and tilt the camera up. You'll see a lot more and have a better time. Anyhow, we easily escape the prefects and get into the library, where the music is fantastic. This continuous stream of books that are floating up to the ceiling is really charming, pointing out this library's sense of verticality. which is also a nod to exploring the vertical side of this library later. But for now, we're here to learn how we can pick up these weird spiky things. Considering the last time we picked up a book, it was massive, green and glowing, it's odd this new book is grey and somewhat tucked away. Although it makes sense from an in-universe standpoint that history books and magic books are differently designed. I was just expecting this book to be on a pedestal with some challenge to get to it. Oh well. I ran back to the shop to grab a wallet upgrade, and Hermione actually seems to update her dialogue, which is not what I was expecting from this game. You can explore a bit more at night, see Hagrid, who is probably the most uncaring and stiff human alive, and I get a bit lost here. God knows the map isn't any help. Thankfully there aren't many paths to take. You enter the greenhouse section and it's really lively. The sounds of bugs and plants, being able to explore 2 smaller greenhouses. Some of the plants are pretty normal and others are more magical. It's cool to be able to explore this without having some reward tied to the end. It makes the place feel more alive. However, what I do not enjoy is the sound of these plant things. It's very fitting for a Harry Potter plant, but it makes the same sound I do when I step on glass. We get the scissor spell, which lets you cut certain objects. This then leads to a mini tutorial of having to cut the vines. It isn't the best, but at least it's telling you what the scissor indicator is looking like. And yes, I'm going to refer to it as the scissor spell. The gameplay of the greenhouse is just boring. It's throwing a plant, shooting a plant, cutting some branches, and you're slogging your way back. Back in the castle, we hear the voice again, and having met Nick twice pays off, as we come in to see his dead body. Like the movie, we're framed by just being near the scene of the crime. At least in the movie, Harry hears the voice and chases it, which leads him to get caught. But here he hears the basilisk, then walks into Nick. Those two events are not actually connected. At least they keep the detail of spiders fleeing from the scene. Stephen Fry tells us exactly what we see.
And he also discovered Fawkes, Professor Dumbledore's pet phoenix.
Twice.
Where he came across the sorting hat.
The conversation with Harry and his hat is just pointless. In the movies, he is wondering whether he is a bad person. The hat kind of makes it worse for Harry. Harry doesn't tell Dumbledore about the voice, which again makes more sense in the movie because Harry doesn't want Dumbledore to think he's a bad person, or that he'll be moved to Slytherin, or anything along those lines. I'm not even sure if you can draw the conclusion at this point that the voice is responsible for the murder of the ghost. There is no threat, because there is no Dobby to give you the threat, nor is the basilisk public knowledge. Anyway, we save Neville.
Phew. Thanks, Harry.
He does not sound like a child.
And Hermione is exhausted from standing around and doing nothing. She doesn't even bother to listen what you went through tonight. I'm really starting to think that Harry is the victim in all of this, and not just of poor writing. Anyway, let's end the night. Day 2 starts as all days do with the house point system. Slytherin remains exactly 1 point behind me, which is odd. We head downstairs so Hermione can tell us what to do today. She no-clips in to tell us that we have our first class. The school in general feels very lively today, with students being in the common room. It's a very nice touch, and I'm glad to say it mostly stays like this. We can also take on the first and only side quest of the game. The quest structure is, get told an item is in a certain area, go there and get it, come back, get a card, rinse repeat 5 times. So it is just a lost and found. I didn't want 100% the game, so I just skipped it. We start our first lesson and Harry decides to stand by a desk as opposed to sitting. I guess because they didn't want you to have to get up from your seat. But why wouldn't they just have all the students standing up at that point? They have the models. Lockhart's egotistical personality is lost here, thanks to the way his lines are said.
Everyone see me? Can you all hear me?
It's not surprising, since this is his second to last appearance. It's just disappointing since his first appearance was quite good. Since Harry is the only student in the classroom, he's chosen to take the Expelliarmus trial, which is a Zelda-esque dungeon where you get a spell near the end. Why these exist in a school is beyond me. We see why it's bad as the school immediately tries to kill its students. This dungeon itself is quite chilling. The green fog, marble floor, the white and black colours, and a lone fire pit give a very ominous atmosphere, with the music only adding to that. I absolutely love this atmosphere. The floor even has a live reflection, except for balloons for some reason. The first puzzle involves these spiked balls. It's a really odd choice to have them shrouded in pink, because it implies you need to use the cutting spell. In reality, you have to bait them into hitting you, dodge, then hit them with Flipendo as they return, which is a fine entry puzzle, although it was difficult not in execution or as a puzzle, nor as a mental challenge. It's only hard because the game is tricking you, breaking its own rules and leaving out obvious information, or forcing you to take damage as you trial and error the puzzle, which is a consistent thing moving forward. It would have been a fine execution test if it was communicated better. This starts to make me realise why I found this game so hard as a kid. The next room has 4 spiked balls hanging from a rope, so at least that's communicated well. You're supposed to run up to a wall, cut the balls so the wall falls down, and then an imp comes out. Not the hardest thing to do, but you do actually have to be quick as so not to get swarmed. However, the next room is the absolute worst. I remember as a kid getting stuck on this for ages because the solution is ridiculous. So, This room has a bridge you need to cross, but it has a spinning barrier in the way. You can cut down pillars similar to the previous room, and when you do, imps will spawn. The solution? Throw the imps into the endless void. That, for some reason, slows down the spinning balls. Again, it might be the only thing that you can really do, but who's reasonably figuring this out? It's just the worst kind of puzzle. Most puzzles are supposed to have logic, but this ignores that idea completely. The next room isn't great either. Not only are the fire spitters back, but we also have this section where we have to hit a fire spitting cauldron. The camera is locked for each section, so it feels really precise and claustrophobic. You actually have to position Harry's model to a T. What makes the puzzle hard is three things: the camera, causing it to be hard to navigate, the fire hitbox being bigger than it presents, and the fact I don't really know how this works. I thought you had to hit them after they shot fire to stun them and then run, but no. It is just a simple timing puzzle. Even the IGN guide confirms it, which is the first time I had to look at a guide for a puzzle in this game. I think it's the fact you can hit them that is so confusing, which is another example of this game's backward communication. I got stuck thinking I could interact with these things. Finishing the puzzle actually feels triumphant, only because the puzzle was really poor. I remember this game being so much better, but now I feel the gameplay was actually so stressful, I subconsciously blocked it out. In the next room, we learn Expelliarmus and have a boss fight against a gargoyle. It's fun to fight a living statue, and for the first time using Expelliarmus, it's actually a difficult fight. You have to be on top of the attacks to deflect it. If it hits the ground near you, it damages you. It's pretty much glorified tennis. Expelliarmus is confusing to use at first, but once you get a hang of the spell, it's quite fun, although it has no uses outside of boss fights. I really enjoyed that dungeon because of its environment. I think that's what I can boil this game down to. Poor gameplay, great environment. I think these dungeons are trying to act like Zelda dungeons, although you get the spell at the very end, and you only use the spell a couple of times. This fluctuates, but it would have been better to have more Expelliarmus themed puzzles and the spell come in earlier. Harry Potter is apparently the only student because they allowed him to go through a 20-minute dungeon to learn a spell, and none of the other students could see him? What the hell are they doing while you're there? We now duel Draco, and apparently he already knows Expelliarmus, so I'm glad I went through that hell when he seemingly didn't have to. I guess they got taught while we were inside the painting. Why can't I take that option? The duel with Draco is pretty much the same as the gargoyle fight, except it's extremely cheesable.
Wait, can I just cheese this fight by spamming this? This is so stupid. What a dumb game.
After winning, Draco summons a snake and dies, then gives me a whiplash as 4 events happen in 2 seconds. Hermione reveals that Salazar Slytherin could talk to snakes, and that's it. There's no social ostracism from students like in the movie. Harry doesn't even wonder if he's a bad person or questions himself. Let's just get to Quidditch. Oliver Wood is having illusions as he thinks he's talking to the whole team, but it's just Harry. The poor man. They even rotate the camera to focus just on Harry, so they don't embarrass him. We learn how to play Quidditch, which is pretty much similar to regular flying, except every ring gives you speed, and you can use that to boost insanely fast. Bludgers can also hit you, which sounds cool, but you're often going too fast to actually be able to see them, so it just becomes random. The music of the flying, coupled with the environment of the players, and the horn when someone scores, is actually pretty immersive and thrilling. It just sucks you on a pseudo rail. When you get near the snitch, you get to this close quarters thing where you have to swipe down to catch it. It kind of ruins everything else about Quidditch, to be honest. We do a proper test and we get an A and a Nimbus 2000 to use in free play.
Hello there, Hermione. What's the matter?
The Mudblood scene happens for no reason off screen, where Draco calls Hermione a Mudblood. It's normally used in the movie to introduce blood racism into the story, because it's a lot bigger there. But here, it just happens off screen and that's it. They don't even try to explore the topic. That time could have been put towards an actual story. Let's just end the day. Starting the night, Hermione wants a book to find out about the Chamber of Secrets, despite never having heard anything about that before. It's another plot flaw that doesn't let the story work by itself.
We can find out about the legend of the Chamber of Secrets, of course.
Of course.
Of course. I suppose you want me.
We're supposed to go to the restricted section, but first I want to go back to the library, so I can use our new spell to access things that we couldn't before.
Look, this is all the stuff you can come back and use, guys. Wowie. What the fuck?
Never mind. Going into the restricted section, there's another sneaking area that actually has a better layout, but I really cannot be bothered with it. Although it is nice they created something more complicated, this stealth section, like most puzzles, is easier to brute force. I did, however, enjoy it more than others. Like the rest of the school, the restricted section tries to kill me. This area is a lot more vertical. You have to climb up and across these gigantic bookshelves. Can you imagine students climbing all the way up these bookshelves just to get to the creepier version of the library? I think the idea is cool. as you have to dodge books coming in and out as you shuffle across, paying attention to which ones move and which ones don't. It's also a very appropriate challenge given the location. If the hitboxes on the books weren't so awful, I'd give it more praise, although it's really just a test of endurance. You can't fall from the ledges, so as long as you have health you can just rush through it, especially since they give you health at the end of each of the ledges. It feels like I'm playing Super Mario Maker. The restricted section looks no different from the library in the models it uses, but it at least has a different feel, even if that feeling is due to it being a way bigger room than it has to be. The nearby bookshelves have books that will come out and attack you. The books are constantly respawning, which is very annoying. It feels like I'm having no impact on anything, especially since there's no puzzle to this section. It's the same as in Borgin and Burke's. You run to one side, either encounter Hedwig and see you need a treat, so you run to the other side to get it, or you run to the treat, then run to the other side. I do not see the point in this. Why not just have Hedwig there already? It's just padding. To get to the treat, we have to jump across these ledges and bookshelves, so we're introduced to one of my least favourite mechanics, jumping across gaps. This is, unfortunately, going to be a common occurrence from now on. Awkward platforming with the still camera. We get the book Hogwarts: A History, and you can even read its 5 pages, which is pretty cool detail. I just have no clue why it is in the location that it is. Before we can leave, we have to learn the slime spell. So we enter the next room where there's a bookshelf boss. The boss fight is pretty weak. You need to hit it back enough for it to topple over, which amounts to spamming Flipendo and dodging it as it's throwing books at you. If you get hit, it will just move forward again. It's not the worst, but it's just boring at the end of the day. We defeat the bookshelf so that we can push the box it was guarding, so that we can use it to climb to the other bookshelves. This makes you beg the question of why. Why not just have the boss block the other bookshelf? Or have it be the box you stand on? You figure out the puzzle as soon as you see it. So the rest of the puzzle just becomes tedious work of pushing the box. You're not actively thinking and working through the puzzle. You often see the solution in the first second and then have to jump through hoops to make it happen. Then comes the most egregious use of this camera. You have to jump across 5 bookshelves, dodging these ghosts and books while the fixed camera makes every jump painstakingly inaccurate. This game is giving you no clear indication that it needs to be as precise as it is. You can easily see Harry's model collide with the ledge, but he won't grab it. The ledge grab boxes are so precise it's painful, so you have to trial and error the last jump.
Okay, aim to the right. If you ever do this, if you ever play this game, and God forbid it's because of me, aim to the fucking right. Holy shit.
After about 7 tries, we get the ectoplasm spell, so we can clear green slime. In the next room, we have another grossly tedious puzzle. There are 4 little rooms with a button each that you have to press. The challenge amounts to using a spell on the right barrier, cutting down the tapestry, and removing the ectoplasm. The best way I can describe it is chores with extra steps. Once you've pressed all buttons, the most jarring cutscene occurs.
Missing something. What, you just walked through the door? What the hell was that? What is this animation?
In our duel with Crab, I try to duel him normally, but each volley lasts too long, so I just cheese it and move on. I should say unfortunately move on, because we're treated to another pointless puzzle. Move the box from one side of the room to the other, climb up, and use the colour-coded spells to remove a barrier. Hit the button with Flipendo, and then repeat on the other side, and then you're done. It feels like those boxes for kids where you put the corresponding shape through the hole, and the fact we have 4 of these puzzles back to back is gross. At least we don't have to backtrack through the vertical section. We go back and give the book to Hermione.
Here it is. I'll read the passage out. Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago.
She reads the history of the House Founders, which McGonagall did in the movie. She talks about the chamber and how the founder of Slytherin built it, so one day his heir could come back, unleash the horror within, and kill all those who are unworthy to study magic. Hermione deduces the horror must be a monster. All of this is completely random information given the context we have. To recap, Harry heard voices, saw Nearly Headless Nick dead, talked a snake down. Hermione then mentioned Salazar Slytherin could do that. She then wants a book on Hogwarts history. She talks about the chamber and the horror, deducing the horror is a monster and that the monster petrified Nick. That's it. There has been no mention that the chamber has been opened. That's just Hermione's godly powers coming in. At least we're getting to the story. End of night 2. As we go to class, we're harassed about being the heir to Slytherin. We never see Harry get ostracized for this. Harry's even treated well by the people who harass him, so bringing this up is odd, especially considering, as far as this game is telling us, no one else knows about the heir of Slytherin. Harry is still the only one allowed to learn, so we enter the dungeon to learn the spell Averford, which lets us transform certain rocks into birds. My live thoughts are better than anything I can script, so I'll just give you those.
I love this room, really. Holy shit, it's like some big ghastly dungeon. The gargoyle in the middle, it seems like some cool representation from what we've had to deal with before. So maybe it's like we're advanced. This room's really nice. I like the room already. It's very gloomy. It's very spooshy. And I like the greens. It's obviously, it's not the subtlest thing in the world, but it's a nice sort of way of showing, it's a nice way of showing like, what spells will be used the most.
Unfortunately, this dungeon suffers due to the game design that we've just experienced in Night 2. It's going from one side of the room, using a spell to clear something, dodge a ghost, then hitting a button twice. Going forward, I'm going to boil down this type of design as A to B, so I don't have to write a paragraph each time. A good thing that I can say about this area is that there are ghosts that are quite atmospheric. Yeah, that's all I have to say. In the next room, Harry gives us a very obvious clue as what to use.
It's dark in here. Maybe I should use Lumos.
I think it's dark enough to where you could come to that conclusion by yourself. I think it ruined a cool idea by not trusting you. My fever dream comes back as we have to jump and slide across the wall section, where we have to avoid ghosts who are flying into you randomly. They're obnoxious here because you cannot avoid them whilst sliding or whilst on the platform. It is RNG in its highest form.
Difficulty in this game. Can I avoid? I can't even avoid that! Fuck off, this thing's gonna come straight for me. What the hell am I supposed to do? That's so stupid. I can't do anything about that.
After taking 2 painkillers, we finish this area and get to Aberforce. Using it on certain rocks will make them turn into birds, which will fly to a determined location. Taking a slide back to the starting room, we get a mildly better puzzle. There's a natural progression to it. You need to have the rocks on a certain side, opening a path so you can hit the rocks you moved when you get to the other side. You're opening up a path and have to backtrack to access that path. It's not a gem, but it's better than the A to B we've gotten. Although the effort is ruined, so we can have another gargoyle as this dungeon's final boss. The gargoyle made sense in the Expelliarmus fight, but is there no way we could have fought a boss with the transfiguration spell? I'm sure there's a fight there, even if it's simple. Maybe you have to avoid getting hit like the Whomping Willow fight, running from one side of the room to the other, moving birds to get out of your way so you can hit the boss, juggling them like a chessboard. I don't know, anything but this. It's so anticlimactic. The gargoyle turns into an egg, which we have to hit to open the exit. I don't know why they do this. Why not just have the exit open as a result of winning at this point? After surviving, we are harassed by Oliver Wood in the classroom. Seems he's remembered his only Quidditch player. He tells us to meet him outside the stadium, which is odd, considering Hermione already prompted us to go there. Although Oliver Wood has immediately forgotten where the Quidditch stadium is, because he is in the hall looking like that girl from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But it's fine, because he just teleports ahead of me anyway. When the Quidditch match starts, the atmosphere is pretty cool.
Well caught by Angelina Johnson for Gryffindor. Great save. What a fantastic catch by Spinnet. I could feel that tackle from up here.
The Quidditch matches are pretty cool, even if they're hard to lose. But if you want a better Quidditch experience, just play Harry Potter Quidditch the game. After the match, Ron goes to bed and so do we. But before we do, I wanted to mention, the day-night cycle is actually a really neat idea. During the day, you're fulfilling the Hogwarts fantasy, and at night you fulfill the Chamber of Secrets side of the story. It's a decent formula for investing people into the fantasy of this game, and with that we end day 3. Oliver Wood was not removed from the house point scene, so his model is still there, and I want to advocate for someone to help this poor man. Coming downstairs, the plot finally starts to go somewhere. Hermione wants to meet us in the girls' bathroom so we can find out who the heir of Slytherin is, since the monster killed Nearly Headless Nick. This would be a bigger revelation if the stakes were higher, as we are the only ones who know about the monster. In the movies, all the students know. Hermione apparently has a plan, but when you get there, it's Harry who comes up with the idea that Draco might be the heir to Slytherin. So Hermione inviting Harry here is just weird. She already has Goyle's hair for some reason. And Moni Myrtle is completely different from herself in the movie, although it's not the worst adjustment. The girls' bathroom is lit really well, a very cool little area. Maybe it's just the fact we get such similar locations, having this smaller one, completely different from anything else, is fun. When you're Goyle, you can't go back into your dormitory. It just says it's locked, which implies it's actually locked and not the fact that you're a Slytherin. It would have been cool if they had some hidden dialogue as Goyle, like they do when you turn into a Rocket Grunt in Pokemon Crystal. It's also weird that Harry as Goyle sounds different in the cutscene than he does in the gameplay. I don't know why they couldn't redo these lines, but okay. So we have to go to the dungeon as Goyle, and I'll say the dungeon is quite bland. It's literally just a cellar. They definitely could have done more. The prefects won't catch you out obviously as you're a Slytherin, although the camera is presented as if you had to sneak around. I guess if you came here as Harry, it would be a stealth section. I never visited the dungeons as Harry, but it's a really cool detail, although the area is so lacking in personality that it ultimately falls flat. When we get to Draco, he is just standing hidden in some corner for no reason. It makes no sense for anyone to be here. There are 2 prefects here and Draco, which makes no sense because there is no Slytherin common room. They could have at least had a fake portrait to give the illusion of having a Slytherin common room. It would work well if you made Draco stand in front of it, and then it wouldn't matter that you didn't have the actual common room. We talked to Draco, who was just standing around. He talked about Dumbledore trying to hush up what's happened, but it's literally been one ghost that's died, and seemingly no one else knows about it besides 4 people, and that's not even a big deal, so why is that line here? The cat was the first thing in the movie, and that let the whole school know. Ginny being taken is what made them think to close Hogwarts. Weirdly, the game is implying the school was shut down because of Nick, when Harry goes through crimes against humanity in his own classrooms. We leave as Harry transforms back into himself, pretending to be sick. We then have to go back through where we came from, which is really cool because it's like a backwards stealth section. You have seen what you will need to navigate through already, although again, it's an easy thing to walk around. It took me about 5 seconds of uninterrupted walking to sneak past them. The idea was there, the execution was not. Unfortunately, the night has been another A to B quest. Talk to Draco, avoid the easiest stealth section in this game, go back to the bathroom, learn nothing, and be done for the night.
Isn't him! Malfoy's not the heir of Slytherin!
Oh.
Day 4 starts, so that means a new class.
The proper incantation for this charm is Incendio. You will now see that a crawl space has been revealed in the wall. Beyond this is the Incendio challenge.
It's so meta!
If you wouldn't mind coming
It's so meta!
It feels like each dungeon has its own colour pattern. The first one was blue, the second one was green, and the last one was red. If I don't know any better, I'd say they're copying the formula of another game. But it's still really cool. The fire adds to that colour, along with the sun imagery. It makes for a really atmospheric dungeon, like the dungeon is going to suffocate you with its fire. The only thing you can do is jump down, which is poorly communicated, considering you take full damage in this game. We actually start this dungeon with a gargoyle fight, which is an interesting shake-up. They also made this arena smaller, which does make it harder. The only change I noticed was the gargoyle throws more side shots, so at least the gargoyles are progressing in difficulty. After we beat the gargoyle, we get into the next room, where we get to fight another gargoyle, and they seem to want to make this camera part of the challenge. I'm already tired of gargoyles now. The gargoyle transforms into a rock that we can use the transfiguration spell on. It's cool that they're using spells from other dungeons, although it's rare and should have been done more often. After we hit this rock, we're once again shafted by this awful camera. We have to get past these fire spitters that I cannot see from this Metal Gear Solid-like camera. At least the fire spitters are in thematically appropriate rooms. After beating the second gargoyle, we are rewarded with a third gargoyle. It feels like it should be a test to show how Harry's grown. Like in Souls games, really hard enemies at the start of the game become easier as you've progressed and become stronger. So I can't fault the idea, but it's hard to tell whether I've become better at using Expelliarmus or not. Although what we have is another case of A to B puzzle. Defeat the gargoyle, hit the rock they leave behind, and avoid the fire spitters. The A to B gameplay of this section is like a combat challenge, but I can see the systems of the gameplay and puzzle structure from a mile away. It's an issue with all areas of the game. Maybe that's just because there's no incentive to explore. There are no hidden collectibles in this dungeon, nothing that makes it worth your time to explore. You just need to get through it. That would make every action feel less rewarding. I believe in other versions of this game, these dungeons are time trials. Whilst the time trial wouldn't change the poor quality, it would at least add layers and tension. All they have are these amazing looking dungeons and put nothing in them besides tedious puzzles. Anyway, we get the Incendio spell, which is just a spell that shoots fire. The puzzle in the room is odd. Lighting the pyres opens the doors for a short amount of time. You don't have to leave the center of the room in time to reach the door, except you really don't. You can just hit the 2 near the door and that would be enough. This game almost gave us a test of skill. It would have been good to have to hit all 4 pyres in rapid succession, then the door stays open. Or you could remove the fire-spitting cauldron blocking you, then you would have to hit all 4, then it would start a timer. It could have been done a lot better if they'd only upped the ante a bit. Finishing this room leads us back to the main area, where the last puzzle is actually interesting. Somewhat. You have 6 switches total in this room, 2 on either side of a tunnel, and 2 behind fires where you came from. You have to understand which buttons rotate which fire from being on and off. The only issue with that is that it can be hard to tell which button corresponds to what fire. Considering they all look the same, there will be a lot more trial and error than necessary, having to see what switch does what, and then the slow travel down the stairs, whilst having to avoid a fire spitter slows this process down even more. Oh, and this.
It's so bizarre. Like, why have this? What's all this padding? Like, why not just have the buttons in the? Why not just have the buttons in the main room? Why you make me go down these tunnels and have to like stun this fire thing? It's just adding so much unnecessary tedium. Point in example.
But otherwise, it's pretty good. Having to hit the flame cauldron so they bounce up, and then having to use Incendio to raise the platform. That's also using previously learned mechanics. This is probably the best puzzle this game has. It actually takes brainpower plus skill. But it's also really confusing and tedious for no reason. At least the last dungeon ends on something satisfying and different with this puzzle, as opposed to a boss. Even though that was the shortest dungeon, I can't say I'm too mad about it. I'm just happy that we're done with them. Oliver Wood harasses us to remind us about the Ravenclaw match, and there's nothing really special to mention. It's pretty much the same as the Hufflepuff one, just getting hit randomly by bludgers more, and the match lasts longer. Which means the announcer says the same line 20 times and the magic is lost. Anyway, after the match, Ron tells us he's tired after cheering, so the day ends. The evening starts with Harry chilling on his bed when Ron jump scares him by bringing him a book. Someone tried to flush it down the toilet and we learn it belonged to T.M. Riddle. Stephen Fry narrates again for us.
Harry went to bed.
Harry wants to read an empty diary because he's bored, I guess. To be fair, he tries to write in someone else's used diary in the movie, so maybe that's not much better. What definitely is not better is that the book talks to Harry like it's a cell phone.
Hello, Harry Potter. My name is Tom Riddle.
I'm at Hogwarts.
No way, is it just a
Horrible
conversation?
stuff's been happening. Do you know about the Chamber of Secrets?
They try to add so many plot points in one scene, it's great. You learn that Hagrid had a monster that killed a girl, and it pretty much echoes the same scene in the movie. Although considering the monster attacked one person 3 days ago that was a ghost, this scene just has less impact. It's not a revelation. Just something to move you onto the next area. They really should call this game Harry Potter and the Murder of Nearly Headless Nick. Harry wants to go ask Hagrid what happened, so when we get to Hagrid's hut, Harry hides in plain sight as Hagrid gets taken to Azkaban. But I'll let you watch the scene in full.
Away! Away to where? No, not the wizard prison. Not Azkaban.
I'm afraid so. A dreadful thing, Dumbledore. As of this moment, you are suspended as headmaster of Hogwarts.
If the governors want my removal, Lucius, I shall of course step aside.
No!
However, you will find that I will only truly have left the school when none here are loyal to me. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it.
Of course, if anyone wanted to find out some stuff, all they'd have to do would be to follow the spiders. That'd lead them right. That's the key to the whole thing. And that's all I'm saying.
Come along now, Hagrid. We don't want to keep the Dementors waiting now, do we?
All right, I'm coming.
I love that scene because Hagrid just throws a key towards you and no one reacts.
That's the key to the whole thing.
Anyway, with the general lack of tension, we enter the Forbidden Forest, which is actually really well done. It's bluer this time, as opposed to being green in the Whomping Willow section. This change is very welcome and makes it feel like a whole new place. The area is crawling with spiders, which fits because Hagrid said follow the spiders, and you actually do. It's combining video game logic with the story. The logic of following enemies means you're going in the right direction. The spiders themselves die differently depending on whether you use Flipendo or Incendio. Not the biggest thing, but it's neat. Same with spiders having different models. This area is an enjoyable section. Some spiders will jump scare you by repelling in your face, some will shoot at you, and others will run up and try and hit you. So it gives a real sense of being overrun by spiders as you're having to dodge them and navigate with the camera. There's nothing much else to say. It is just combat and exploration, and using spells to remove barriers. It's pretty basic. Boring progression, but the spider's environment pick up the slack. After killing a bunch of his kids, we talk to Aragorn, Hagrid's pet spider. Harry says that the school thinks Hagrid's been studying the monster in his students when that hasn't even happened. I'm getting massive whiplash between this game and the movie it's based on. Hermione hasn't even been petrified yet, but her being petrified is what sends them into the forest to begin with. If it was a student who was petrified at the start, it would be an obvious space for students to spread rumours. And maybe just seeing a petrified Hermione would have really raised the stakes by 1000%, because nothing is really at stake for us to be here. They're not doing the bare minimum to get us to care about the issue the monster is creating. Anyway, Aragog tells us he's not the monster. Harry asks what is. Aragog says he can't say. Then he gets his children to attack you. I do get lost for a bit in this next section. It's not like the map helps. The way forward was to burn the cobweb to the left of Harry as the cutscene ends. It just looks like it's part of the scenery, so there's no reason to think of it as the barrier. Maybe that's just me. I guess I'll take the L on this one. In the next area, a lot more spiders are here, but it's not as intense because this is supposed to be the number of spiders here by the King Spider's command. If they had no spiders, or a small amount at the start, then that number could grow and climax here. It could have been tenser, but Aragog's command seemingly means nothing. I'll say it's very cool that we're slowly climbing up this tree hill thing. Cutting the last cobweb cuts Aragog down, and as he does, Harry falls on nothing. And so the boss fight with Aragog starts. His model is really cool because of its size and detail. So is the shadow of the above cobwebs, projecting onto the tree floor. Really great environments going on as always. In the fight, Aragog will charge you, create a shockwave, and that's pretty much it. You have to wait for him to make a shockwave, avoid it by running away, then run up to him and hit his weak point with Incendio, which he weirdly exposes for us. It's a simple but active boss fight. The spot he exposes glows the same colour as the Whomping Willows did, so you would think to use Flipendo, but you have to use Incendio. I guess it makes sense since we were just using Incendio, but why Incendio over Flipendo? Probably the easiest boss, but at least it looked cool. God now appears in this game to drop a potion vial for us, like it's normal. Then he comes in his flying car. seemingly knowing where we are. He saves us and then confirms his godhood when he repeats dialogue that he's never heard before.
Follow the spiders. What was Hagrid thinking? You're lucky to be alive.
He tells us that he can't find Hermione and someone took Tom Riddle's diary, which isn't even brought up till the end. Similar to the movie, I guess. Anyway, this ends the night. This is the final day and it starts like any other.
Gryffindor.
Go us.
Hufflepuff.
Nice.
But Harry starts by mentioning to himself the objective,
Oh no! The Quidditch match.
without any other character telling you where to go and what to do. It's a small thing and it's really...
Hi Harry. Big match against Slytherin today. I'm glad it's you that's doing it.
Well, that was pointless. On the way down, the voices start coming again. Harry asks if his friends can hear them, in a way that implies he has told them about it before. Hermione, after hearing that her friend is hearing voices, suddenly figures out something and heads to the library. This is the point where she figures out that a snake is travelling through the pipes. It's something you can piece together, I suppose. Harry sometimes hears voices near walls, Harry can talk to snakes, and there's a monster going around. But me and you both know this game didn't think like that. Again, this is the first time Hermione has heard Harry mention the voices, so this revelation makes no sense. Heading outside, I used the broom to fly around the grounds for the first time, which is actually pretty fun. The music and momentum work so well. You can explore outside of the castle, and I'm surprised they actually modelled the entire exterior for you to touch. It's really fun. However, the effect wears off after a few minutes. You can also collect beans by flying through rings in the air. It becomes an okay experience. Also, something I didn't realise you could do is talk to Neville, and get access to some mini-games. One is where you throw gnomes into a lake, one is where you throw gnomes into hoops for points, and the last one is a broomstick race. They all cost beans and grant trading cards, so it's not really worth your time unless you're going for 100%. The match with Slytherin happens and I actually lost. You can actually lose the match, and if you do, it doesn't restart. Slytherin just wins the Quidditch Cup. Besides my salt, it's a good thing that you can lose both the House and Quidditch Cup. It does good for the game to not put you in the winner's seat by default. It adds more tension and makes me genuinely want to do better. By not getting caught by the prefects, going back to get A's on all the Quidditch tests, all in fear of losing the House Cup. Although this feeling came very late, so it doesn't really matter as much. It's still a good idea to be able to lose and have that loss carry through with you to the end. And Ron even has unique dialogue depending on whether you lose or not. Ron tells you that Hermione wasn't at the match, and then he goes to bed. So you can see this day is pretty lackluster. If you want, this could be the end of the final day of this game. However, I just spent the rest of the day at Hogwarts, going through all the castle, using my new spells to acquire as many trading cards as I could. I think it's better to open every chest in one big segment because navigating this place and remembering where the chests are was really obnoxious for me to try. But I can understand if that's someone else's cup of tea. But to me, having to explore every time I got a new spell was too time consuming to be worth it. Everything is just wizard cards. If you want to upgrade your health bar, it's good. But otherwise, you can really skip exploring Hogwarts, unless you enjoy the environment as much as I do. It is mildly disappointing that some of the more tucked away areas are nothing but tight corridors that lead to nowhere, or a bunch of random dead ends. I know this isn't a review, but I recommend if you play this game, only do it if you have the patience. It's good for collectors, but I also cannot recommend 100%ing this blind. With that said, we end the day. So this is the final night, and it dawns on me that this entire story happens in 5 days. The final house point ceremony happens, and despite Slytherin winning the Quidditch Cup, they get no house points, which kind of removes some of the stakes over that loss. Ron tells us that they can't find Ginny, that Hermione was petrified in the same place nearly Headless Nick was, and that she had a note that talked about basilisks, a giant snake breed. They come up with the conclusion that the monster in the chamber is a basilisk, and it used the pipes to travel around. Although the pipe idea makes no sense considering it only seems to attack things inches away from the toilets. Twice, if you've seen the movies, you know that inside the ghost toilets is where the chamber is. It's a decent consistency for this game's story that Nick and Hermione were both found outside the toilet. Also, considering you heard the voices near the ghost toilets makes total sense why you would hear the basilisk. Although it's weird that the basilisk only attacked people outside the toilets. But then again, in the movies, the basilisk attacks people in a few different locations and no one sees or hears about it. So at least this is a bit more of a logical answer. Ron then ruins everything with the most nonsensical line ever.
Do you think Ginny might be in the Chamber of Secrets along with that flipping big snake? McGonagall said they searched everywhere in the castle, but no one knows where the chamber is. We've got to find her. Okay.
But then immediately afterwards, he pulls out his godlike powers, being able to guess the location of the chamber without any evidence.
It's inside the walls. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. What if it's a bathroom? What if it's in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom? Okay.
So we go on to defeat the basilisk. The movie had multiple direct motivations for stopping the creature. To save Ginny, to save the school, to prove Hagrid's innocence, and maybe as revenge for what it did to Hermione. This game has 3 of those pieces there, but doesn't really play them. Harry and Ron only go into the chamber because Ron thinks Ginny is in there, for no reason. In the movie, he knows Ginny is in there. So imagine doing all this work to save Ginny, which was really asleep in a closet or something. There's just no real threat. We confirm the location with Moaning Myrtle, and this genuinely great scene happens.
Harry, say something! Something in parcel tongue! But, go on, Harry. Okay then. Open up. English.
Harry just jumps down into the chamber, and Ron, despite wanting to save his sister, does not follow. Again, the whiplash here is nuts with how fast-paced everything is. So the Chamber of Secrets itself is... okay, the snakeheads are cool, but this hallway feels less creative or enchanting than any other environment we've been in. Oh, and this is it, by the way. Just a hallway to a boss room. Not even an attempt at a puzzle. Okay, so 50 things happen here, and the whiplash gets worse.
Tom Riddle?
She's still alive, but only just. She's been writing in the diary. My diary for months. Ginny Weasley opened the Chamber of Secrets. I am Lord Voldemort. Kill him.
The scene just plays out how I would explain the scene quickly to someone. The scene itself is a quick summary. I'm not surprised, but this game skipped over what is actually a good scene, where Tom Riddle is slowly revealed to be Voldemort, the one orchestrating the attacks. But the scene also mentions the bloody messages on the wall, which in this game did not happen. He talks about mudbloods as if it was a common theme. The topic was mentioned once off screen. Tom calls the basilisk and it actually looks really cool. It even has a T-Rex roll. Walks and flies out of nowhere to blind the basilisk. There was never any mention about how if you look it in the eyes, you die. That was an entire movie thread, which didn't really seem to be an issue a second ago. Or at all. I can't make a joke about what happens next. The Sword of Gryffindor just appears on the ground. No story, no nothing, it's just there. The game isn't trying to hide its laziness anymore. The boss fight starts, and again, the boss fight arena is great. It really feels like some spooky chamber, with the head of Salazar Slytherin really adding to this. But this is the most lackluster final boss I've ever had to face. Its main attack is spitting acid at you, which I guess is appropriate for the basilisk. You avoid the acid, and then use the sword to aim some weird beam thing at its open mouth to damage it. Then when you do, the sword flips out of your hand. You don't have to go and recover it from where it landed. Do this a bunch of times as he spits more venom per rotation, and you're done. The venom doesn't even stagger you. If the paragraph about the final boss feels lackluster, then it conveys the experience of the boss fight. Which is unfortunate because the actual basilisk model is quite intimidating. After you damage it, it will travel through the pipes and you have to be on the lookout and avoid it hitting you, which really puts some pressure on you. But don't be mistaken, this boss fight really did suck and I don't think I've experienced anything less anticlimactic than this. Anyway, at least we got this clip out of it.
No way!
The game is not trying anymore. It's trying to rush this cutscene as much as I'm trying to rush this script. The diary appears one more time and never gets any love, despite being the most important thing in the story, or at least the movie story. When you go to Ginny, she says it was all me, which means she petrified Hermione and Nick, because that is literally all that has happened in this game due to the basilisk. I know she means it was her who opened the chamber, I'm just pointing out the odd phrasing. It then immediately cuts to us seeing our friends, one of which abandoned us at the first hurdle, and the other talks about the exam, because it's apparently the end of the year. The school year is 5 days long. Going to the House Cup ceremony where we just win because of course we do. It tells you that if you don't have enough house points, that you can go to the activities to get more. But what? The flying test? The Quidditch test? There wasn't really anything that we could do to improve our house points, and it isn't clear that those activities even contribute to house points. I don't know how you can lose. I think you have to try to lose. I do feel this game tries its hardest to make you win. Even if you lost the House Cup, you still can end the game. So why they push you to win if you haven't is beyond me. After we get the House Cup, another Stephen Fry narration happens, which is probably the best thing to happen, but he just talks about all that we did and how it was explained to Dumbledore. Harry actually says it was courage, loyalty, and friendship that helped him to win. He says this in a mildly sarcastic way that implies this game is being self-referential. I love this hidden hatred this game seems to have for its cliches the source material uses. Dumbledore then explains it was Voldemort who charmed the diary and blah blah blah, move on. To round up, I feel this game is really for toddlers, and I mean that literally. Any puzzle or challenge, 9.9 out of 10, is an endurance test. And I think that's why I thought this game was longer and harder as a child, because I understood less about video games and things in general. Ultimately, the game feels lazy, and it is, and maybe it was forced out the door. The game came out literally 2 days after the movie, so they were working with inside information. Maybe that information was poorly communicated and that's why there are deficits, or they were worried people would play the game and not watch the movie. I'm trying to be respectful of the developers' efforts whilst being critical, because there's a lot to love, it just doesn't age well. And it's a shame. The nostalgia goggles were violently ripped off with this playthrough, but the music and atmosphere stick with me, to the point where I listen to a lot of the music regularly. The experience of being a wizard is there. It's fun to explore Hogwarts, to cast spells and have a wand, but it's squandered when the story isn't driving anything. I'm no story snob, but the gameplay can only go so far, and with nothing to push me, that's my main complaint. I can be nicer on the gameplay because it was made in 2002, whilst also suffering from time restraints, but the story takes things from the movie that aren't in the game, like the blood on the wall, that wasn't in the game, so why did they keep the mention of it? The GameCube, PS2 and Game Boy versions are all so different. The Game Boy version is really different, but the PS2 seems to be the best version. I haven't played it, but the side quest is seemingly longer at the very least. The basilisk boss fight is altered slightly, so maybe some deficits come down to hardware limitations, and maybe those limitations bled into the story, where the limitations force them to cut scenes and models, with the actors not being able to re-record their lines and such because of time. So maybe they had to use lines that made no sense in this watered down version. For improvement, the biggest would be the camera and puzzles for me. I won't go over them again because I trust that I went over them enough. And I say this with love, but I never want to play this game again.